Hi, I'm Cynthia Hunt, the program specialist here at the Amarillo Public Library. I love fall, and one of the things I love most about it are the autumn leaves. The colors are just so gorgeous. The only bad thing about them is that they aren't available year-round. So I'm going to fix that by showing you how to make your very own knitted autumn leaf, an oak leaf. I'm doing a series on knitted autumn leaves. There are 3 different leaf patterns that you can look for on our YouTube channel. The first is the easy leaf, the second is the oak leaf, and the third is the maple leaf. I'll be doing these stitch by stitch as you come across them in the pattern, and the patterns are all down below, and that way you'll be able to master a stitch, hit me on pause, and when you come to a new thing you don't understand, hit play, and there I'll be to explain what you need to do next. What we're going to be doing, I am going to be using size 8 double pointed needles. Now I like to use bamboo needles because they're a little less slick than the metal needles. So if you can, get some of those, but you can also do it on regular double pointed needles. Why are they called double pointed needles? Kind of self-explanatory. We are also going to be using some worsted weight wool in a color of your choice, or you can use a variegated yarn, but I'm using a worsted weight yarn in fall colors for each of these, and that's a medium weight yarn. It'll have the number 4 on the little band around the skein. So once you have your yarn and your needles, you'll need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle so that you can tie in your woven ends. So let's get started. Hi. Today we are going to be learning to make a knitted autumn oak leaf. The link to the pattern is down below, but what we're going to do is start off by doing a slip stitch and casting on. I like to use the long tail cast on. Here's how you do it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is tie a slip knot. And I'm holding the yarn with the cut end off to my left and the skein or ball end off to my right. I'm going to make a loop with the skein end going over the cut end and then bring it under so that it's kind of putting it in half. Then what I'm going to do is pinch that part and bring it up, and that makes a slip knot. I then put the needle through the slip knot, the loop in the slip knot, and I can pull the skein end to make it fit onto the needle. So it's nice and snug. It's not going to slip right off, but, which is not why it's called a slip knot. It's because you can make it smaller or bigger. And if you want to, it can slip all the way out. So we'll make that loop again. Bring it under on the skein end and then pull it tight so this part becomes a knot. Insert your needle and close it so it's just nice and snug. Now what we're going to do is the long tail cast on, and that's my favorite go-to cast on, at least for now until I find one I like even better. And what you're going to do is you're still going to have the cut end off to your left, the skein or ball end off to your right, and you are going to put your thumb and forefinger of your left hand together and insert it between those 2 pieces of yarn. Then you're going to get your other fingers, your ring finger and your little finger, underneath that to hold those 2 ends so they don't get too loose. Then you're going to pull the needle so that these little loops are formed over the thumb and the index finger. And what we're going to do is take the tip of the needle up along the thumb, going under that piece of yarn. Then we're going to cross over to the index finger and stroke down it, and then on through the loop on the thumb. Then we're going to let go with the thumb and tighten it just like we did the slip knot, so that there's a second stitch now on the needle. We're only going to need 3 stitches, so I'm going to do this one more time. We bring this forward so that this crosses an X. Bring it up the thumb, down the index finger, and across through the loop of the thumb, going in a downward motion. Then you're going to let go of the yarn that's on the thumb, and now you have 3 cast on stitches. If you want to get more experience with the long tail cast on, you can go to the Knitted Bunnies video on this channel, and we have a whole row of like 13, 14 stitches, and you can watch that as many times as you want, and that'll probably get you better experience with casting on. But for now, we only need 3, so we're going to go on to the next thing, which is making an I-cord. Now that we've got our 3 stitches cast on, what we're going to do is make what's called an I-cord. That's the letter I and the word cord, C-O-R-D. This is going to be the stem of your leaf, so you can make it whatever length you want. If you want a really long stem, make a really long stem. I usually make mine about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. But this is why we're using double pointed needles, because when you make an I-cord, what you're going to be doing is, instead of turning your work like we normally do, you're going to slide your stitches to the other end of that same needle and then knit those 3 stitches. And you'll repeat it until the I-cord is the length you want. Here's how we do it. Now, if you printed off the pattern from the link below, it did not have the I-cord until the end of the leaf. So you knitted the leaf, then you knitted the I-cord, and then you sewed it on. I'm going to take a little bit of artistic license, and since both things I'm going to have an I-cord with 3 stitches, and then take on the rest of the pattern from there. So don't freak out if I'm doing an I-cord when it's not mentioned on the pattern. This is kind of saving you a step. If you want to do it the way it is on the pattern, you can just meet me whenever we start doing flat knitting again. But I'm going to show you how to do the I-cord so you'll know how it's done. Normally, when you've finished casting on, you'll turn your work and start knitting again. But in this case, because we are knitting an I-cord, which is spelled letter I space C-O-R-D, the word cord. So it's letter I, cord. It kind of looks like the letter I in a sans serif font. So what I'm going to do, instead of turning my work, is I'm going to slide those stitches down to the other end. So I don't have to take it from my right hand to my left hand, my right hand to my left hand. I'm just going to slide it down. And I'm going to knit 3 stitches. And what I want to be sure to do, because you don't want to accidentally knit with the cut end of your yarn, you're going to hold it in your left hand along with the left needle. So we're going to go on ahead and knit 3 stitches. If you don't know how to do a knit stitch, go on ahead and go to that same bunnies video I mentioned before, and all that is knit stitch. You can practice knit stitch till you die from it. But because we're going to be doing a lot of other new stuff, I'm going to go on ahead and let you watch how an I-cord is made. Now the I-cord is going to be the stem of your leaf. So you're going to keep sliding your needle down to the other end after each time you've passed all of the knitted stitches from one needle to another. Then you're just going to move that needle over to your left hand and slide it up to the tip. And this doesn't take very long because there's only 3 stitches on it. So you just knit 3 stitches, give it a little tug so it doesn't get too curled up. Plus it makes you think like, ooh, look, I'm getting something done. There's something there to tug. And knit 3 more stitches. Give it a little tug because it does tend to curl. Then switch it over to the other hand and slide it down. Knit 3 stitches. And you'll keep doing this until you've got the stem the length you want. I usually like it to be about 1.5 inches to 2 inches on these leaf patterns, but it's already over 1 inch long, so I'll probably only do this 1 or 2 more rows, and then we'll move on to other things. So we're going to knit 3 more stitches, tug it. Then we're going to do 1 more row of I-cord making because I'm not the most patient person in the world. And now we've got our I-cord. And from this point on, we will be turning our work instead of sliding our work. And if you want to, you can go on ahead and switch to regular straight needles. I wouldn't go longer than 10 inch. These are like 7 inch double pointed needles. But the leaf pattern isn't going to go wider than 7 inches. So if you want to keep it on 7-inch needles, go ahead. Okay, I have a confession to make. I made a slight alteration. I took some artistic license with the oak leaf pattern. What you are going to be doing now is where the printed pattern begins. Is where they basically start with 3 stitches and then they knit 2 rows. I'm going to show you how to do the knit stitch in case you haven't remembered, but in the written pattern, they went on ahead and made the entire leaf and then separately made the I-cord, which you can also do, and then sew it onto the base of your oak leaf. I decided since we're using 3 stitches either way, we might as well just knit the I-cord first. So, mea culpa, I made a little bit of artistic license to go on ahead and start off that way. But what you're going to do now is knit 2 rows, turning your work each time like you normally do when you work on the flat. Here we go. Now, what you're going to do, this is where the actual leaf pattern on the link comes in. We're going to knit 3 stitches, then turn the work instead of sliding and knit 3 more stitches, and then we're going to do something different. Okay, now that we have finished your 2 rows of knitting in the flat, we're going to learn 2 new things. You can see how with the oak leaf, it goes out on both sides and then goes in. And there's also this little raised bit that looks like a little spine on your leaf. This row is going to begin making both of those. First with an increase stitch called the knit front and back, which is usually shown on most knitting patterns, including this one, as the letters K, F, B, and a purl stitch between them, which is how you make this nice little raised spine. So you'll only be doing 1 purl stitch for every other row. If you want to get a little bit more practice in on how to do the purl stitch, go to my tutorial on the easy knitted leaf, and that will show you a lot more about purling. So get ready, here we go. Okay, we've got the 2 rows of knit stitch done. Now what we're going to do is, because you want the leaf to come out and then in and out and in, which is what oak leaves do, let's face it, we're going to have to first make it wider by doing an increase stitch. And the increase stitch that we're going to do is called knit front and back, usually shown on patterns with the letters K, F, B. Super easy to do. Here's how you do it. You knit just like you would a regular stitch, but instead of taking it off the tip of the needle on the left like you normally would, you just swirl the tip of your needle over and go through the back portion of your stitch and throw your loop over that again to make 2 stitches out of 1 stitch. Then you can slide it off. The next stitch is going to be what is called a purl stitch. That is spelled P-U-R-L and is usually indicated by the letter P. Now, to make a purl stitch, you have to have your yarn on the side facing you, not on the side away, unlike the knit stitch. So you're going to bring your yarn forward. Then you're going to, there are 2 basic differences between the knit stitch and the purl stitch. When you do a knit stitch, you go into the stitch in the same direction as the left needle. In a purl stitch, you go in the opposite direction. And instead of having the needle in your right hand behind that needle, it's going to be in front. And because we brought the yarn in front too, that's the second difference. In a knit stitch, the yarn comes from the back forward. In the purl stitch, you need to bring your yarn forward first, then you're going to move from the front to the back around the right needle, then bring it out. Now, you're only going to do this once per row on this pattern. So if you want to see a lot of purl stitches, there is a video called the Easy Knitted Leaf, which is another leaf in this same series of knitted autumn leaves that uses the purl stitch a lot. So if you want to practice the purl stitch and get really familiar with it, I would recommend you going to that video tutorial and doing that leaf pattern and then come back to this one. Now that you've finished your purl stitch, you're going to bring that yarn back behind your work, away from you, and then you're going to do another knit front and back. So we'll do knit 1, then bring it down, swirl it around, and then go through the back part of that same stitch. And then you'll bring your yarn around just like you were doing a regular knit stitch, and you bring it off. So where you had 3 stitches, you now have 5. So you've increased the width of your leaf by 2 stitches. That's like 40%. So now we're going to turn our work and just knit all the way across. And then we'll do that one more time so you can see how this stuff is done. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is knit front and back to increase again, just like we did on the last time on this side. Knit front, go to the back, knit back, take the stitch off, then we're going to knit a stitch. Then we're going to bring the yarn forward to purl that center stitch. Then we're going to take the yarn back, knit 1 stitch, then knit the front, bring it around for your knit front and back, take it through that back loop, go around it and bring it out. And where you had 5 stitches, voila, you now have 7. So you'll turn your work and knit, and you can keep doing this until you get to row 9, and I will show you what to do to start decreasing, because every time you're gonna come out on an oak leaf, you're going to go out, but then you're going to need to go back in. And that purl stitch that you're doing is what makes this nice raised center spine on your leaf. So we're going to go out all the way to row 9, and at row 9 we're going to start to go back in, and I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, so now that we have widened out our leaf, we get to the point where we have to go in for the first time, and that is done using a decrease stitch. The decrease stitch we are going to be using is called the knit 2 together, and that's basically pretty much how it sounds, but I'll show you how it's done. Once you've learned that, you know every stitch you need to know until we get to row 39, at which point we're going to be doing some things you haven't seen before, so I'll walk you through that. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to begin decreasing our leaf width so that we have that nice first little lobe of the leaf. And we're going to do that by doing a decrease stitch called the knit 2 together, and that is done just like it sounds by taking 2 stitches onto your right needle at one go and knitting a stitch through them. So they go from 2 stitches to 1 stitch. Then what we're going to do, I'll go on ahead to the other end of this row. I'm knitting 2 stitches, then I'm going to purl 1. I think I did this a row early, but that's okay. This is just so you can see it. So now you've got 2 stitches on here. And the last 2 stitches on the row, you're going to knit through both of them at the same time like it's one single stitch. And now where you had a certain number of stitches, now you have 2 fewer stitches. So you've gone from, in this case, you went from 9 to 7, or in my case, I did it wrong, so I have 2 fewer. So this is how you do it. You now have all of the stitches you need to know until you get to row 39. So when you get to row 39, you can go on ahead and pause now, and when you get to row 39, you can start me up again. Okay, now I don't have the rest of the leaf on here, but what I do have are the 9 stitches. Oops, I have one too many, I'll knock one off. 9 stitches that you need to know how to work line 39, which is, look at how long that freaking line is. It goes on forever. But what we're going to do is follow along with me. You're going to knit 3 stitches. Then you're going to turn your work, which in effect is a short stitch. Don't freak out that you're not doing anything with these stitches right now. You'll do that later. But as you can see on this leaf, you're going to divide your stitches into 3 little fingers. And that's what we're starting to do here. So we've done 3 stitches, we've turned our work. Now we're going to knit 2 together. You know how to do that by now. Knit 1. Then we're going to turn your work again. And see how this is becoming like a little bulb? Then you're going to knit 2 together. And bind off. Now, what do we mean by bind off on this? In this case, what we're going to do is we are going to make that last stitch a bit bigger, And we're going to cut off, give it about 10 inches, just as you'll have plenty to work with when you're weaving in your ends. But you're going to cut off that end, and you are going to pull that cut end through that last little loop of a stitch. And you're going to pull it just like you did your slip stitch at the slip knot at the very beginning of this. And now you have your first lobe. And you'll just leave it alone, and you'll pick up your cut end, and then you're going to go to the next 3 stitches on your needle, and that you are going to hold your skein or ball yarn in your left hand so that it doesn't get away from you, and you are going to use it as your ball yarn again, and you're going to knit, bring it forward to purl because you still have that little spine in the middle of your leaf, and that's where you are. And then you're going to bring it to the back again and knit. Then you're going to turn your work, and yes, I know you haven't gotten all the way through, but what you are going to do is bring your yarn to the back, over the top between the 2 needles, and you are going to knit 3 stitches back. And you may notice that this first one becomes a little tight. You can pull on the cut end of your yarn to tighten it up if it gets uncomfortable. Okay, then you're going to knit 3, 2, 3. Okay, then you're going to turn your work again and bring your yarn to the back again, and you're going to do a knit, purl, it's off of there, and then bring your yarn to the back and do a 3rd knit stitch. And then you're going to turn your work and knit 2 together, and knit 1, then turn your work again, knit 2 together, and bind off just like you did that first lobe of leaf. So you'll make it a little bit bigger, take it off your needle. You're going to cut your ball or skein yarn, bring it through that loop, and pull it closed. And now you've got 2 of the 3 done. You've got 1 more to do. It looks a lot better when you have the whole leaf there, but it will come out looking like this. And these will get a lot rounder when you are weaving in your ends. So you've got 3 stitches left. You're going to attach again your ball or skein yarn by holding it in your left hand. Then you're going to knit 3, going from the back. Knit 3, turn your work, knit 3, and again with that one that you've just added on with the new yarn, it's going to feel a little loose, so you can tighten it by pulling on the cut end. Then you're going to turn your work again, knit 2 together, knit 1, Then you are going to turn your work one last time, knit 2 together. Now you have just one little stitch on your needle. You're going to make that a little bit bigger. Cut your skein yarn. Whoops. And pull it through. And that way you have your 3 little fingers that stick up on the end of your oak leaf, and you will use your nice long cut ends with your yarn needle to make them a little bit fuller and smaller so that they're a little bit more rounded like these are. This was a thicker yarn, so they look bigger and it's easier to see. So that way you have 3 that kind of form the end of your leaf. Okay, so now you've finished the knitted autumn oak leaf, and all you have to do is weave in your ends, and if you'd like, you can go on ahead and block your oak leaf so it'll be even flatter and more evenly proportioned. And the way you do that is to get a towel, some straight pins, and a little bit of water. What you're going to do is get your oak leaf damp, run some water over it, squish out the excess, place it face up on this one. Since it's knitted on both sides, I'm going to place it face up so that you don't mess up your little purl row in the middle. And you're going to pin your leaf in the shape that you want, stretching it out as much as you feel you want to, evenly, and pinning it into place on the towel. Walk away, and once it's dry, when you come back, you've got yourself a nice flat oak leaf. Thank you for joining me for this knitted leaf pattern. And keep in mind, there are 2 other knitted leaf tutorials that I've done that are also on our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this one, hit like. And if you'd like, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to hit that notification bell so we can let you know when we do something new. Take care. Bye-bye.